I always had like a little bit of anxiety around conflict in general. Even just having an argument with somebody was hard for me to do. I'd rather just agree to something than have an argument.
Hi, I'm Stephen Byrne and welcome to It's Good to Talk show brought to you by 3 and Jigsaw. This is the show where people can hear all about the important role that adults play in the lives of young people dealing with mental health challenges. In today's society, there are so many things that can affect the mental health of young people. Just getting through day-to-day things can be really, really tough and can leave people feeling sad and isolated. But by talking about it, we can bring people together and also hopefully make people feel less alone. This is the first of 4 episodes, and joining me today is illustrator comedian Aoife Dooley. We have fashion, lifestyle and travel blogger Louise Cooney, and also martial arts expert and coach John Kavanagh, and we're talking about going back to school. Because that's the thing, in school and just in life in general, we can have good and bad days, and that's very normal, that's very natural. But your day-to-day in school, did it lean on one side or the other, or was it?
No, I mean, I got bullied a little bit. I wasn't really in the popular guys crowd. I was a bit out on my own. But I always had like one or two friends, one or two friends.
Having gone through certain times in school where it's been very difficult and like John mentioned there, like being bullied and those kind of things, I think in a weird kind of way that kind of set me up for what I was going to do later in life. So the way that we were learning just wasn't the way for me. And then obviously I didn't know I was autistic at the time. I only found out that last year. So that kind of had a big impact on my school life as well, if that makes sense.
And I think if you look at kind of your life now and you appreciate many things in your life, you have to look back at those times and go, oh, I wouldn't be like this, or I wouldn't be living this life right now, or I wouldn't be the person maybe with the values and the morals or whatever I have right now if I hadn't actually gone through those things or hadn't kind of dealt with them in whatever way I did. And Louise, when did you leave and what was your experience like?
So I finished school in 2010, so 9 years ago. When my school, it was 600 girls, like all different ages, hormonal teens. There was definitely like fights and there was bitchiness at times, and then there was the harmonious side of it as well. I suppose it's kind of what you'd expect in that regard, but you learn as you go through it, I guess. And it was nothing, I suppose, ever too serious, like with regards to me anyway,
Did you ever keep diaries or anything? Was that ever anything you confided in and kind of?
Oh yeah, I still have them actually. I found them at home and I brought them over to my apartment. Oh, they're gas to read through some of the things in it.
I have so many. I kept them all my life.
It's nice to have them though, because you
can
look
I went
back.
home recently and I was like, I need to burn these because if anyone ever finds them, I would just die,
Oh, there's
And yeah, no, I couldn't. There was just so many. It was just like literally looking into my younger years. It was bizarre.
Did it benefit you though? Do you think writing that down and getting your feelings into a page?
And I didn't realise at the time that writing down was helping me, but for me it really did. It was just getting those thoughts out of my head onto paper. I still do it now. If I get a bit overwhelmed, I'm okay, I'm just going to write this down. I don't keep it in a diary now. It could be a note on my phone. It could be, on a document on my laptop. And it's not really for reminiscing that I do it.
I think it's all about sharing stories and actually just people communicating, which is something that just doesn't really happen amongst men, especially at a young age. Did you find that in school? Were there any guys that you could talk to, that you could open up to, or that you could kind of say, I'm just not feeling my best today? No,
not really. Like I was just thinking there, I started secondary school 30 years ago.
Wow.
So I think it's a lot better now. Like I have a niece and a nephew, and I love hearing their stories about school. It's very different than mine, where autism is, I never heard that word through all of school. I look back now and I realise there's probably kids that were struggling in some areas. That's probably obviously what they had, whereas now, and also that people being creative is appreciated a lot more in school. Like for me, I was actually a little bit lucky that I was academic. I was good at maths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I could see the kids that were good at art and stuff, and they weren't as appreciated. So I love seeing that now, that school, I think, is kind of seen more for what it's good for now than what it was when I was. When I was doing it, it was only about getting points in your leaving cert, whereas now I think they do appreciate art and music and drama.
AJ, we're getting there.
I mean, like most things.
It's so glad we on the points
It improves every generation, and I think it is getting better. My brother James, I love his leaving cert results. The only thing he got enough points for was to do basket weaving in Achill Island. I just,
To be honest,
I
it's very him though as well.
Yeah, he actually regrets. He regrets
I know the
that he
decade.
didn't do it. I love the idea of him over there weaving baskets. But and now look at him now. He's very successful because he bounced around a few jobs, and I always knew because of James, he's a bit unique. He has a thing called charisma, which is very rare. So I knew he would be fine. But I know so many people that went through school and I remember getting the points. I remember getting my points. I ended up. Like James, I like rolling around with half-naked men all day doing jiu-jitsu. But it wasn't all that important to me what my points were in my Leaving Cert. It was more that I had a good work ethic. I found a topic that I enjoyed. For me, it was sport. For James, it's whatever he does in his world. So I think that's more important, and I think that's what school should be about trying different things, try different experiences. Something will click with you.
I have a lot of friends who did have a difficult time in school, and a lot of their outlets were creative outlets, and that's how they were able to get through certain things. Was that the same for you when things were tough? Was it
definitely.
Just expressing yourself in that way?
Definitely. Even through primary school, drawing was always a way for me to kind of communicate how I was feeling, and just for me to kind of understand what was going on around me as well. And I think because I got bullied so bad when I was in primary school, I was bullied inside and out of school. I used to spend hours in my room drawing, which kind of benefited me from my career in the future. So I don't knock it.
Is there anything you remember day to day, the day-to-day struggles of school that really stand out?
I remember just being in the class with people was hard because I just wanted to take a break every few minutes, but I didn't know at the time why. But I just got really exhausted being around people and then having to kind of, because all the rules, and then having to kind of answer a question if the teacher asked you. So I just started this thing, and I didn't even know why I was doing it at the time. But I just started pretending to faint all the time. So I'd get out of class. And then I started to think that I was weird, and I was like, why am I doing that? But in a weird kind of way, I was doing it to kind of protect myself so I could take myself out of that situation. Yeah. I was having a meltdown. I was overwhelmed, like there was too much going on. So that was just the easiest way to get out of a class without having to describe to someone, oh, well, I just feel a bit strange, I don't feel right. And back then, if you said anything like that to your teachers, they're like, oh, you're grand, sit down.
Just sit down, class over in 15 minutes.
If you faint, there's no messing about that, you're taking it out of the class. So that was the only...
straight out of the seat,
Yeah.
John, is there anything day to day that you can remember that, just even the simple struggles, because sometimes, the smallest things back then can, mean the biggest, can be the biggest obstacles?
I'll be honest and say no, and I don't think I would have had any. Like I said, I don't think I had any major experiences different than anybody else. But I think what I have been thinking about was how I did deal with it, how I did deal with situations like that. And I found for me, and I know from other people as well, those who were most successful at dealing with those situations, they were part of either clubs or societies. So if you're artistic, you're part of an art group. I was part of sports teams. I've got other friends who are part of drama groups. And they found amongst themselves solutions to these things. Because if you chat to somebody that you relate to because you have a similar interest in a sport or activity, it's easier to tell them something than it is just trying to be putting your hand up in class and saying if you have some feelings or something like that. I visit schools pretty regular doing various talks, and my nephew's school in Ballantyre is incredible. All these different societies and groups they have, no matter what you're interested in. There's a little group you can join for that. And
it's great in school.
Oh, it's fantastic. Filmmaking and crazy the amount of things to do.
When you go back to those sort of skills and you do those talks, can you kind of see yourself in the classroom?
Of course. There's always the group. And it's funny because there was always the scribbler, I remember the arty guy in my classroom, and we always saw art class as a break. That's when I'd just be chatting to your mate. Whereas there was one person who was furious, and then when we were doing classical, maths or something, which I'd be like, "Oh, this is interesting." He was like, "What the hell? How'd you find this interesting?" But I think there is that, there's about, I think there's 7 or 8 different personalities, and then a lot of different faces. So you can start kind of putting people into groups, and when they tend to get together, they tend to be able to talk to each other a lot easier than people who are not interested in the same.
It's always
thing.
just about finding your community, in every regard, in every corner of life. Find your tribe, and then.
Well, that's right. In our gym, we have one tribe, one vibe. That's what we say.
Yeah.
And that's why, MMA for what I do, martial arts, it tends to attract a different type of person. Because I wasn't really part of the soccer team or the rugby team or whatever. I dabbled in everything, but it wasn't until I found MMA, and MMA tends to be. Not everybody normal wants to go fight in a cage on a Saturday night. So it is an odd group of people. Yeah. But because we're an odd group of people, then we it can be odd with each other. and then we find it a little bit easier to talk about topics that maybe are more difficult.
That's the great thing about, I suppose, the internet now, is that you can find these people that maybe years ago you wouldn't have been able to find, people that you can relate to and that you can kind of reach out to, maybe. You know, I didn't have that in school, but I did have my own, I suppose, interest that I developed through school that helped me get through, I suppose, the monotonous day-to-day. That would have been kind of what I struggled with. I don't like routine. I don't like doing the same thing, wearing the same thing, following the same rules, studying classes that I didn't pick. You know, I like having, you know, variety, and I like having control over what I'm doing, and in that sense, school didn't really suit me.
So was the uniform very difficult for you?
It was difficult, you know. Like, I mean,
it is something that, like, I remember back when I was in school, that, you know, so many people would kind of, you could see the people who were being.
I do appreciate it, and I do think that at that age, I see the benefits of it, because it puts, you know, wearing your own clothes every day would put a lot of pressure on people, and it would have put a lot of pressure on me as a teenager. But at the same time, it is nice to put your own twist on things, and I don't think we should be punished for that. And back in the day, we were, you know, you were.
It was really strict actually as well. Yeah, when I was in school, like, even if you had a little bracelet on, it was like, take that off. Or nail varnish.
Fined.
It's like, why? Like, what does it, like, you know? Like, I can understand what you're saying, like with the uniform and like putting pressure on people. I'd be in the exact same boat as you. I'd be the same, and I think the uniform is a good idea in that scenario. But I think you should be able to have a few piercings if you want, or a few bracelets. I don't think it's hurting anyone. Like, it's not like. I
remember we were brought to the bathroom and our makeup was taken off.
Oh, really? Same here,
we used to have to take. We were like nail varnish.
Is there anyone that stands out for you within your experience of school that you could say was, you know, one good adult, someone that really helped your experience either in and out of the classroom?
Yeah, there like, now that I think about it, there was, you know, one family member that I was able to confide in, that, you know, when I was going through a difficult time, not necessarily school, but like with my friends, or, you know, with whatever was going on. You know, even though you're in school, you still have a social life, and you still have a personal life, and you have a family life, and sometimes that can be the hard part of school, even though it's not school. You know, so for me,
it's all wrapped up in it's all part of the same bubble.
So I had somebody that I could confide in about that and just talk. And I don't even remember them giving me solid advice, but just the fact that they were there to listen, and they made me feel like it wasn't crazy what I was going through, and it was normal to feel that way. And it's only today that we're talking about it that's kind of coming back to me. And yeah, like, that did help me a lot, just having someone there who was going to listen to me. And like, I think I was very lucky to have that, and not everyone does have that, but there are always those people out there, so you have to try and open yourself up to people, you know, and be vulnerable and share these things when you have
I think
things going
sometimes people think about the person and they're like, maybe that's not the right person to talk to, that's not the right person to talk to. A lot of the time it can even just be hearing your own voice back. Like, it can be any person, but once you actually hear yourself say the way you're feeling out loud, it can make a lot more sense, and just to yourself.
Surprise you as well, I think. You never know who's going to be good in certain situations, because you don't know most of the time what people have been through. You know, so if you have a feeling, okay, I think I can trust this person, then I would try and talk to them, you know.
What about yourself, John? Is there anyone that really stands out that...
It wasn't actually somebody I'd met. It was a writer. I got to meet him many years later, but I always, in secondary school for me, I always had like a little bit of anxiety around conflict in general. Even just having an argument with somebody was hard for me to do. I'd rather just agree to something than have an argument. And my dad was the complete opposite of me. My dad is more like my brother James. They have unbelievable fights every time they meet each other, screaming matches, and then it's gone in a second, and then they're over it. Whereas I'm a lot more like my mom, that it takes me a lot to get wound up, but then if I do, I'm going to feel nauseous, and I'm not going to feel good for hours. And so, yeah, I had this kind of underlying fear the whole time, almost like a car horn going would have my heart racing. And I started reading books by this guy, Jeff Thompson. He was a martial artist and an author from the UK. And he was the first adult I'd ever heard being open and honest about feeling fear, about feeling afraid. And like I said, my dad seemed to be like a superhero character that would fight anybody and argue with anybody, and never affected him. So I couldn't relate to him. I couldn't talk to him. I'd try maybe once or twice and just be, you just do this. Yeah, well, I can't do that. You know, that's not me. And when I started reading about this guy, who was a fearsome looking person, he was a martial arts expert, and he was talking about feeling anxiety and feeling fear. and that it's okay. And then he had other books on techniques about dealing with that, about breathing exercises and putting yourself in stressful but manageably stressful.
What age were you at this point?
I probably started reading them when I was about 16,
Amazing.
17. And then I got to meet him
mature.
when I was in my mid-20s, and he actually knew about me by that stage, which was a very cool experience. He wrote me a really nice letter. But so he was probably like someone that had a huge influence in me in my teens, but he didn't know me. I
That's
just knew
incredible.
him from reading his books.
And do you remember the sparking moment that kind of made you seek that out? Was there a...
Yeah, I used to read martial arts magazines, and there was always this author, and he was famous for he was a bouncer in the 70s in Coventry, which would have been a very rough place, and he was quite a witty person as well. So his books were very easy to read, and they were about nights on the door and the different, some serious situations and a lot of funny situations. But he kept coming back to this topic of feeling afraid when he saw someone coming up and he knew that there was a chance this could turn physical. And again, I'd watched all the Bruce Lee movies and everything, and everybody seemed to just like never have those situations, never be like terrified of someone coming up to them. And I just thought I was a coward. Like, why am I feeling like this? No one on the planet feels like this. And then this guy that was, a tough guy that could handle himself, had it all the time, every single time. But it was how he dealt with it, how he handled it, and how he went through it. And then I actually, when I was going through college, I put myself in the door. I did the door for 5 years, and I did it so that I could experience verbal and physical confrontation and see if I could do it. But anyway, I guess my point being is that was my one good album.
That was your one good album. For you, Aoife, is there anyone that really stands out?
Maybe not so much through primary school or secondary school, but more when I got into do a diploma in Aoife Dooley, could say. Yeah, there was, I wouldn't have, I'd say at that stage, had a lot of confidence, and I would have had a lot of anxiety myself, because by that stage I would have been probably about 18, 19, and then by that stage I was just really confused because I didn't know what was going on, and I just still had not made solid friends. I was only kind of starting out like in college now, and it was something else that was completely new. But there was one guy who was covering for someone on maternity leave who came in and taught us, and he just had an energy about him, like what John was saying. He just had like that charisma that you just wanted to be around him all the time, and you wanted, him to teach you like what you wanted to listen to him like, and you respected him. And I'd never felt that way about a teacher before, in the sense that like anyone else who I ever looked back on in school who taught me probably wasn't that into their job, or they weren't really they didn't love what they done, but this guy did. And I remember we were in the National Art Gallery one day. He brought us in to have a look around the gallery, and I was just drawn like on one of the chairs in my notebook, and he came over and I just slammed my notebook shut, and he just said to me, he's like, "Oh, can I have a look?" And I was like, okay, and I let him have a look at it, and he was looking at all my drawings, and he turned around to me and said, "You're really good at this. This is your niche. This is what you need to do." And no one had ever said anything so nice to me about anything that I've ever done in my life. That literally is why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Wow.
Is because that man, because he made me believe in myself when no one had ever done that for me before. And when you don't believe in yourself, it just might just take that one person to kind of give you that confidence. And I think it's so important to kind of have those people in your life who uplift you. And kind of, you just don't know how that will change someone's life by just giving them that little nudge. And he definitely, most certainly done that for me now, I have to say.
Wow, yeah, for me, I think I was thrust into kind of the professional world quite young. So I started working in television and radio and stuff when I was 17. So that was off the back of the YouTube videos and stuff. And I still hadn't come out and all that sort of stuff. And there was one person in work who I knew was gay, and we were at some sort of drinks thing or something. And I was still in school, in 5th year or 6th year or something like that. I was just turned 18. And I said something to him, and I remember him kind of looking at me and going, "Are you?" And he was like, "It's okay." It's like, whatever. And that was for me a defining moment of, okay, I can actually be gay here in work, which I didn't think was possible. Which is crazy. Look around media, everyone's gay, everyone. But I thought that it was going to define me, and I was going to be this, and I wouldn't have a career then, and all this sort of stuff. So my sort of adult was someone who I don't actually even really know, and I don't even remember their name. And
was that the first time that like someone had ever said that to you? Like, did you feel like a relief that you
it was
kind
just
of
like, oh, okay, I'm not going to lose my career. I'm not going to get bullied in school. I'm not going to all this sort of stuff. Because for me, and I hate the term, it was easy to pass, like, if that makes sense. But I hated that term. But it was easy to kind of pass by and not be suspected in school. And it was probably because I played football and I was good at football. And I was a big Chelsea fan.
You learn how to blend in, I suppose,
exactly.
as well. Like, you just learn how to do it, because I suppose in that kind of way you don't want to stand out in school, and you don't want to be looked at as being different, because different is weird. And it's still looked at like in schools now, like people do, like the amount of people who've messaged me, like who are on the spectrum, they're like, oh, that's why I haven't told anyone in my class, because this happens or that happens. But I think it should be, I think everyone should just be celebrated for, excuse me, for their own individuality and for who they are. Like, it's easier to kind of blend in than it is to be yourself sometimes, I find, going through school. I think it's, I most certainly did that. Like, I just blended in and just kind of done whatever everyone else was doing, just to try and kind of take the attention off me, because I was so afraid of everyone finding out that I was actually just this out and out weirdo who like bit their toenails and done every random thing that you can think of that like you would not tell anyone, like, and that was me, like, so I kind of, it's only now that I'm like, hey, it actually feels okay to be myself and to be me, and it feels good kind of like feeling that way now, like, and I'd wish that other like kids going through school can feel that way now as well. Do you know that way, like?
Because you've placed anxiety as something that you experienced within school, but did you have any of the vocabulary around that at all?
No, not at all. Like you said, I was even thinking when I was in secondary school, about 600 odd boys, and I didn't know one gay person. Yeah. Obviously there were some, whereas now when I go visit and I speak to my niece and nephew, and they're whatever they are, almost 18 now, but even when they were 14, 15, 16, their vocabulary around, you know, gay, autism and anxiety and mental health, geez, I didn't understand any of that until I was in my late 30s.
You start to learn from them in a major way.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. There's a lot of optimism for the future, because they're doing a hell of a lot better than my generation did anyway.
And ours as well, like, I don't even remember, like I even remember how I would have treated certain people, like, when I was in school. I was reflecting on like how I was being treated myself, didn't know how to treat other people, like, and I would have hands down like have been mean to certain people, like, that I wouldn't, you know, like, if knowing the information that I have now and what teenagers are, like what you're talking about today, like you said, like, I think it can only be a good thing, like, that people are so aware of other people's kind of, like, just other people, if they have mental health issues or they're being individuals or learning disabilities, like, they're so aware now, like, and I can see that from teenagers messaging me, like, they have a better understanding on the world than I ever did at that age. Like, it's sometimes it's kind of, you'd be taken aback of some of the messages they send you, and you're just kind of like, whoa, I wish it was like that when I was in school. Like, I wish I had someone like that I could talk to.
Is there anything you can think about your one good adult that you had back then that would be able to process, you know, new advice for people right now who are watching this, who, you know, that you'd be able to go, oh, I remember that from them, so that would actually be good for someone to hear right now if they're in a situation where they want to be a one good adult? I
think just listening. I think that's, you know, you don't realise that how much you can help someone by just sitting and listening. You don't have to have the answers, you don't have to give advice, and you don't need to know step by step what's going to happen next. I think just sitting there and being there and listening to someone and taking it in can help someone so much.
I think that's so key, that nothing has to be completely solved.
No.
In any regard.
But listening to someone will help them, because they'll get it out and they'll feel better afterwards.
I think it's about not feeling like you're on your own. I think once when you can relate to somebody, it kind of opens you up a bit then to know that, like, there's other people out there like you that, like, you can talk to about these things, and that you're not just kind of on your own, and you're not like just the oddball out. And I find that a lot of people who would message me about that, or message others like that I know about these kind of things, it's kind of like, I think a lot of people just need that kind of, like, for someone to say, like, it's okay to just be yourself, like, it's, you know, there's no kind of like right or wrong, like, there's no like rules to follow. You can just be yourself, you're your own person, like. And I think a lot of people, when they like hear that, like, they've never heard it before, and they're so kind of used to following what everyone else is doing that they don't know that they can just be themselves. And I think that's kind of like true creativity, and like you mentioned earlier on, Louise, like, it's just kind of being able to express yourself and finding those interests and what you're interested in, and people who are like-minded, that you do open yourself up to kind of just being like there for people and being able to like listen to other people, and like, and I find then with that, like, you can offer that then to other people who don't have that, and then it's like a circle, then they offer it to someone else, and that's what it's all about, really. Yeah, isn't it? Like, that's what it's all about, I think.
And what about yourself?
Like, I don't know whether it's a bloke thing, but if your girlfriend has complained to you about something like, you know, these shoes are uncomfortable, I always have to have a solution. Well, take them off, put on comfortable shoes. You know, I'm solution orientated. Where sometimes it's just okay to say, no, that's terrible. You know? So I think when I
understand and be
there.
there.
Just understand and be there. You know, and I stop trying to solve every problem.
It's just about the way you say it.
It actually made life better for both of us. So
it is life though. Like, life isn't always great, and it's not always amazing.
You won't always have the answers.
But I think one thing I've learned, being where I am now, coming out of school, and it's been 9 years, there are, you know, ups and there are downs, and you get through them, and life just continues to surprise me with how bad it can get and then how good it gets afterwards again.
Is there anything as well, if you were to walk into a classroom right now and you saw your teenage self sitting there in one of the desks, is there anything you would say to them? Is there anything you'd love to kind of impart on them?
I'd probably say, just a heads up, one day you're going to meet this fella called Connor. Make sure you get him to sign a contract that you get 40% of everything you earn. No, for me, I definitely would have said that it's okay to feel fear. It's okay to be afraid.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get over it until you start subjecting yourself to it. Stop avoiding it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having a chat with us, guys, and sharing it. I actually forgot the cameras were here for a little while. Really appreciate it, because I know how difficult it is for myself to go back to school. So if you think you know a young person in your life right now who is struggling with school and you don't know what to do about it, here are 5 tips that might just help. Time it right. Find a quiet time to talk when it's just the two of you. Ask what's on their mind. Let them know you're concerned. Be supportive. Let them know you're there for them, whatever they need. You don't have to fix it. Don't rush to fix the problem. Help them to work through it. Listen without judging. Let them know there's no issue too big or too small. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, it's good to talk.